that was just too much. My, already. Oh, never mind. Okay. It's like we're in and out. Sorry, y'all. I had to restart my whole phone. It was frozen. We might have to go to Instagram. We'll see how it goes this time. And then if I have to end it again, we'll just go to Instagram because that was just too much. My whole phone was frozen, but we're back for now. I barely started chapter 43, so like I didn't even get too far in. I don't know what the last thing y'all heard was, but we're just gonna start 43 over. I was like one paragraph in anyway, so it doesn't really matter. All right, chapter 43. Lorcan was still wondering what the hell he was doing 3 days later. They'd left that plains town far behind them, but the terror of that night lay draped over the carnival caravan like a heavy blanket with each mile the wagons hurried down the roads. The others hadn't wised up to how exactly they survived the Ilkin, hadn't realized the Ilkin were near impossible to kill, and no mere mortal could have slain one, let alone four. Nick and Umbriel gave him and Alid a wide berth, and only catching their wary, examining stares at the dinner campfire every night revealed they were still piecing together who and what he was. Alid kept well away from him too. They hadn't had a chance to set up their usual tents, thanks to fleeing so quickly, but tonight, safely within the walls of a small plains town, they'd have to share a room at the cheap inn Molly had begrudgingly paid for. It was hard not to watch Alid as she took in the town. Then the inn. The keen-eyed observation, the hint of surprise and confusion that sometimes crossed her face. He used a tendril of his magic to keep her foot stabilized. She never commented on it, and sometimes that dark, foul magic of his would brush up against whatever it was she carried, the gift from a dying woman to a hot-headed assassin, and recoil. Lorcan hadn't pushed to see it since that night, though he'd spent a great deal of time contemplating what might have come out of Morath. Collars and rings were likely the start of it. Whitethorn and the Bitch Queen had no idea about the Ilkin, perhaps about the majority of horrors Alid had shared with him. He wondered what a wall of wildfire would do to the creatures, wondered if the Ilkin were somehow training against Aelin Galathinius' arsenal. If Erwin was smart, he'd have something in mind. While the others trudged into the ramshackle inn in search of food and rest, Alid informed Molly that she was going on a walk along the river and headed into the cobblestone streets. And though his stomach was grumbling, Lorcan trailed her, ever the husband wishing to guard his beautiful wife in a town that had seen better days, decades, no doubt caused by Ardalan's relentless road building across the continent and the fact that this town had been left far from any artery through the land. The thunderstorm he'd scented building on the horizon lumbered toward the stone rock town, the light shifting from gold to silver. Within minutes, the thick humidity was washed away by a sweep of welcome coolness. Lorcan gave Alid all of 3 blocks before he fell into her step beside her and said, "It's going to rain." She slid a flat glance at him. I do know what thunder means. The walled town had been built on either side of a small, half-forgotten river, 2 large water gates on either end demanding tolls to enter the city and tracking the goods that passed through. Old water, fish, and rotting wood reached him before the sight of the muddy, calm waters did, and it was precisely at the edge of the river docks that Alid paused. "What are you looking for?" he asked at last, an eye on the darkening skies. The dock workers, sailors, and merchants monitored the clouds too, as they scurried about. Some lingered to tie up the long, flat-bellied barges and latch down the smooth poles they used to navigate the river. He'd seen a kingdom, perhaps 300 years ago, that relied on barges to sail its goods from one end to another. Its name eluded him, lost to the catacombs of his memory. Lorcan wondered if it still existed, tucked away between 2 mountain ranges on the other side of the world. Why do I feel like that should sound familiar? Alid's bright eyes tracked a group of well-dressed men heading into what looked to be a tavern. Storms mean looking for shelter, she murmured. Shelter means being stuck inside with nothing to do but gossip. Gossip means news from merchants and sailors about the rest of the land. Those eyes cut to him, dry humor dancing there. That is what thunder means. Lorcan blinked as she followed after the men who'd entered the dockside tavern. The first fat drops of the storm plunked onto the moss-speckled cobblestones of the quay. Lorcan followed a lead inside the tavern, some part of him admitting that, for all his 500 years of surviving and killing and serving, he'd never quite encountered someone so unimpressed with him. Even God's damned Aelin had some sense of the threat he posed. Maybe living with monsters had stripped away a healthy fear of them. He wondered how a lead hadn't become one in the process. Lorcan took in the details of the tap room by instinct and training, finding nothing worth a second thought. The reek of the place, unwashed bodies, piss, mold, wet wool, threatened to suffocate him. But in the span of a few moments, Alid had grabbed herself a table near a cluster of those people from the docks and ordered 2 tankards of ale and whatever was the lunch special. Lorcan slid into the ancient wooden chair beside hers, wondering if the damn thing would collapse under him as it groaned. Thunder cracked overhead, and all eyes shifted to the bay of windows overlooking the quay. Rain fell in earnest, setting the barges bobbing and swaying. Lunch was dropping before them, the bowls clattering and sending the goopy brown stews splashing over the chipped rims. Alid didn't so much as look at it, or touch the ales that were plunked down with equal disinterest for a tip, as she scanned the room. "Drink," Alid commanded him. Lorcan debated telling her not to give him orders, but he liked seeing this small, fine-boned creature in action, liked seeing her size up a room of strangers and select her prey, because it was a hunt for the best and safest source of information, the person who wouldn't report to a town garrison still under Ardalan's control that a dark-haired young woman was asking questions about enemy forces. So Lorcan drank and watched her while she watched others. So many calculating thoughts beneath that pale face, so many lies ready to spill from those rosebud lips. Part of him wondered if his own queen could find her useful, if Maeve would also pick up on the fact that it was perhaps Aneth herself who taught the girl to look and listen and lie. Part of him dreaded the thought of Alid in Maeve's hands, what she'd become, what Maeve would ask her to do as a spy or courtier. Perhaps it was good that Alid was mortal, her lifespan too short for Maeve to bother honing her into quite possibly her most vicious sentinel. Hearing him talk about her makes me giddy. He was so damn busy thinking about it that he nearly didn't notice when Alid leaned back casually in her chair and interrupted the table of merchants and captains behind them. "What do you mean Rifthold is gone?" Lorcan snapped to attention, but they'd heard the news weeks ago. The captain nearest them, a woman in her early 30s, sized up Alid, and then Lorcan, then said, "Well, it's not gone, but witches now control it. On behalf of Duke Parrington, Dorian Havilard's been ousted. Alid, the cunning little liar, looked outright shocked. "We've been in the deep wild for weeks. Is Dorian Havilard dead?" She whispered the words as if in horror, as if to avoid being heard. Another person at the table, an older, bearded man, said, "I never found his body, but if the Duke's declaring him not to be king anymore, I'd assume he's alive. No use making proclamations against the dead man." Thunder rattled, almost drowning out her whisper as she said, Would he go to the north? To her?" They knew precisely who Alid meant, and Lorcan knew exactly why she'd come here. She was going to leave. Tomorrow, whenever the carnival rolled out, she'd likely hire one of these boats to take her northward, and he would go south, to Morath. The companions swapped glances, weighing the appearance of the young woman, and then Lorcan. He attempted to smile, to look bland and unthreatening. None of them returned the look, though. He must have done something right, because the bearded man said, "She's not in the north." It was Alid's turn to go still. The bearded man went on. "Rumor has it, she was seen in Ilium, trouncing soldiers. Then they say she was in Skulls Bay last week, raising hell. Now she's sailing elsewhere. Some say to Wendlin, some say to Ilwy. Some say she's fleeing to the other side of the world. But she's not in the north. Won't be for a while, it seems. Not wise to leave your home undefended, if you ask me. But she's barely a woman. She can't know much about warfare at all." Damn. Lorcan doubted that, and doubted the bitch didn't make a move without Whitethorn or Gavriel's son weighing in. but Alid loosed a shuddering breath. Why leave Terracin at all? Who knows? The woman turned back to her food and company. Seems like the queen has a habit of showing up where she's least expected, unleashing chaos and vanishing again. There's good money to be had from the betting pool about where she'll show up next. I say Banjali. In Ilwi. Ross here says Varese and Wendelin. Why Ilwi? Alid pushed. Who knows? She'd be a fool indeed to announce her plans. The woman gave Alid a sharp look, as if to say to keep quiet about it. Alid returned to her food and ale, the rain and thunder drowning the chatter in the room. Lorcan watched her drink the entire tankard in silence, and when it seemed the least suspicious, she rose and left. Alid went to 2 other taverns in the town, followed the same exact pattern. The news shifted slightly with each recounting, but the general consensus was that Aelin was on the move, perhaps south or east, and no one knew what to expect. Alid walked out of the 3rd tavern, Lorcan on her heels. They hadn't spoken once since she'd gone into that first inn. He'd been too lost in contemplating what it would be like to suddenly travel on his own again, to leave her and never see her again. And now, staring up at the rain and the thunder, Alid said, I was supposed to go north. Lorcan found himself not wanting to confirm or object. Like a useless fool, he found himself hesitating to push her toward the original path. She lowered her face, water and light gilding her high cheekbones. Where do I head now? How do I find her? He dared say. What did you glean from the rumors? He'd been analyzing each tidbit of information, but wanted to see that clever mind at work. And some small part of him wanted to see what she'd decide about their splitting ways, too. Stop it! Alid said softly, Banjali, in Ilwi. I think she's going to Banjali. He tried not to look too relieved. He'd arrived at the same conclusion, if only because it was what Whitethorn would have done, and he trained the prince himself for a few decades. She scrubbed at her face. How far is it? Far. She lowered her hands, her features stark and bone-white. How do I get there? She rubbed at her chest. I can get you a map, he found himself saying, just to see if she'd ask him to stay. Her throat bobbed, and she shook her head, her black hair flowing. It'd be no use. Maps are always useful. Not if you can't read. She told him! Lorcan blinked, wondering if he'd heard her right. The color stained her pale cheeks, and that was indeed shame and despair clouding her dark eyes. But there had been no opportunity for it these weeks, he realized. No chance where she might have revealed it. I learned my letters, but when everything happened, she said, and I was put in that tower, my nursemaid was illiterate, so I never learned more. So I forgot what I did know. Oh, now he's gonna teach her how to read! We're in chapter 43 of Empire of Storms. Oh! He wondered if he would have ever noticed if she hadn't told him. You seem to have survived rather impressively without it. He spoke without considering, but it seemed to be the right thing to say. The corners of her mouth twitched upward. I suppose I have, she mused. Lorcan's magic picked up on the garrison before he heard or scented them. It slithered along their swords. Rudimentary, half-rusted weapons, and then bathed in their rising fear, excitement, perhaps even a tinge of bloodlust. Not good. Not when they were headed right to them. Lorcan closed the distance to Alid. It seems our friends at the carnival wanted to make an easy silver coin. The helpless desperation on her face sharpened into wide-eyed alertness. Guards are coming? Lorcan nodded, the footsteps now close enough for him to count how many approached from the garrison in the heart of the town, no doubt meant to trap them between their swords and the river. If he were the betting sword, he'd gambled that the 2 bridges that spanned the river, 10 blocks up on either side of them, were already full of guards. You get a choice, he said. Either I can end this matter here, and we can go back to the inn to learn if Nick and Umbriel wanted to get rid of us. Her mouth tightened, and he knew her choice before he offered. Or we can get on one of those barges and get the hell out, right now. The second, she breathed. Good, was his only reply as he gripped her hand and tugged her forward. Even with his power supporting her legs, she was too slow. Just do it, she snapped. So Lorcan hauled her over a shoulder, freeing his hatchet with his other hand, and ran for the water. Oh, stop! Stop! Oh yeah, get out of here if you don't want spoilers. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Elide bounced and slammed into Lorcan's broad shoulder, craning her head enough to watch the street behind them. No sign of guards, but that little voice who often whispered in her ear now tugged and begged her to go, to get out. The gates at the city entrance, she gasped, as muscle and bone pummeled into her gut. They'll be there too. Leave them to me. Elide tried not to imagine what that meant, but then they were at the docks, Lorcan sprinting for a barge, thundering down the steps of the quay and onto the long wooden dock. The barge was smaller than the others, its one-room chamber in the center painted bright green, empty, aside for a few boxes of cargo on its prow. Lorcan pocketed the axe he'd thumbed free, and Elide gripped his shoulder, fingers digging into muscle as he set her over the high lip of the barge and onto the wooden planks. She stumbled a step as her legs adjusted to the bobbing of the river, but Lorcan was already whirling toward the reed, slim man who barreled toward them, a knife out. "That's my boat," he bleated. He realized who exactly he would be fighting as he cleared the short wooden ladder onto the dock and took in Lorcan's size, the hatchet and sword now in the warrior's broad hands, and the expression of death surely on his face. Lorcan said simply, "It's our boat now." The man glanced between them. "He won't clear the bridges or the city walls." Moments. They had only moments before the guards came. Lorcan said to the man, "Get in, now." The man began backing away. Elide braced her hand on the broad, raised side of the boat and said calmly, "He'll kill you before you clear the ladder. Get us out of the city and I swear you'll be set free once we're clear." "You'll slit my throat then, as good as you will now," the man said, gulping in air. Indeed, Lorcan's hatchet bobbed in the way she'd learned meant he was about to throw it. "I would ask you to reconsider," Elide said. Lorcan's wrist twitched ever so slightly. He'd do it. He'd kill this innocent man, just to get them free. The man's knife drooped, then vanished into the sheath at his side. "There's a bend in the river past the town. Drop me off there." That was all Elide needed to hear as the man rushed toward them, untying lines and leaping into the boat with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. He and Lorcan grabbed the poles to push out into the river, and as soon as they were loose, Lorcan hissed, "If you betray us, you'll be dead before the guards can even board." The man nodded, now steering them toward the eastern exit of the town, as Lorcan dragged her into the one-room cabin. The cabin interior was lined with windows, all clean enough to suggest the man took some pride in his boat. Lorcan half-shoved her under a table in its center, an embroidered cloth covering it, shielding her from anything but sound. Lorcan's footsteps going silent, though she could feel him taking up a hiding space to monitor the proceedings from within the cabin. The patter of rain on the flat roof, the thud of the pole as it occasionally knocked into the side of the barge. Her body soon ached from holding herself still and quiet. Was this to be her life for the foreseeable future? Hunted and hounded across the world, and finding Aelin. How would she ever do that? She could go back to Terrasen, but she didn't know who ruled from Orinth. If Aelin had not taken back her throne, perhaps it was an unspoken message that danger lay there, that all was not well in Terrasen. But to go to Ilvi on a bit of speculation, of all the rumors Elide had listened to in the past 2 hours, that captain's reasons had been the wisest. The world seemed to still with some unspoken tension, a ripple of fear, but then the man's voice was calling out again, and metal groaned. A gate. The city gates. She stayed under the table, counting her breaths, thinking through all that she'd heard. She doubted the carnival would miss them, and she'd bet all the money in her boot that Nick and Umbriel had been the ones who'd set the guards on them, deciding she and Lorcan were too much of a threat, especially with the Ilkin hunting her. She wondered if Molly had known all along, from that very first meeting, that they were liars, and had let Nick and Umbriel sell them out when the bounty was too good to pass up, the cost of loyalty too great. Elide sighed through her nose. A splash sounded, but the boat ambled onward. At least she'd taken the little bit of stone with her, though she'd miss her clothes, shabby as they were. These leathers were growing stuffy in the oppressive heat, and if she were to go to Ilwi, they'd be sweltering. Lorcan's footsteps sounded. "Get out." Wincing as her ankle barked in pain, she crawled from under the table and peered around. "No trouble?" He shook his head. He was splattering with rain or river water. She peered around him to where the man had been steering the boat. No one there, or in the rear of the boat. He swam to shore back at the bend, Lorcan explained. Alid loosed a breath. He might very well run to town and tell them. It won't take long for them to catch up. We'll deal with it, Lorcan said, turning away. Too fast. He avoided her eyes. Too fast. Did he kill him? Did he kill him? She took in the water, the stains now on the sleeves of his shirt, like he'd washed his hands quickly, sloppily. She glanced at the hatchet at his side as he strode out of the cabin. You killed him, didn't you? That was what the splash had been, a body being dumped over the side. Lorcan halted, looked over a broad shoulder. There was nothing human in his dark eyes. If you want to survive, you have to be willing to do what is necessary. He might have had a family depending on him. She'd seen no wedding ring, but it didn't mean anything. Nick and Umbriel didn't give us that consideration when they reported us to the garrison. He stalked onto the deck, and she stormed after him. Lush trees lined the river, a living shield around them. And there was a stain on the planks, shining and dark. Her stomach rose. You planned to lie to me about it, she seethed. But how would you explain that? A shrug. Lorcan took up the pole and moved with fluid grace to the side of the barge, where he pushed them away from an approaching sandbank. He had killed that man. I swore to him he'd be set free. You swore it, not me. Her fingers curled into fists, and that thing, that stone wrapped in that bit of cloth inside her jacket, began to stir. Lorcan stilled, the pole gripped tight in his hands. What is that? He said, too softly. She held her ground. Like hell she'd backed down from him. Like hell she'd allowed him to intimidate her, overrule her, kill people so they could escape. What is that? She refused to speak, to even touch the lump in her pocket. It thrummed and grumbled, a beast opening an eye, but she didn't dare to reach out to so much as acknowledge that strange, otherworldly presence. Lorcan's eyes widened slightly. Then he was setting down the pole and stalking across the deck and into the cabin. She lingered by the edge, unsure whether to follow or perhaps jump into the water and swim to shore, but there was a thud of metal on metal, as if something was being cracked open, and then Lorcan's roar shook the boat. The fuck? What the fuck? What? Why is he roaring? The river, the trees, long-legged river birds hauled themselves into flight. Then Lorcan flung open the door, so violently it nearly ripped off its hinges and hurled what looked to be the shards of a broken amulet into the river, where he tried to. Oh, he just found out. Oh, he just found out. Oh, he just found out. Oh, damn. Into the river, or he tried to. Lorcan threw it hard enough that it cleared the river entirely and slammed into a tree, gouging out a chunk of wood. He whirled, and Alid's anger stumbled a step at the blistering wrath twisting his features. He prowled for her, grabbing the pole as if to keep from throttling her, and said, "What is it that you carry?" And the demand, the violence and entitlement and arrogance had her seeing red too. So Alid said with quiet venom, "Why don't you just slit my throat and find out for yourself?" Lorcan's nostrils flared. "If you have a problem with my killing someone who reeked of itching to betray us the moment he got the chance, then you're going to love your queen." For a while now, he'd hinted that he knew of her well enough to call her horrible things, but what do you mean? Lorcan, gods above, looked as if his temper had at last slipped its leash as he said, "Selena Sardothian is a 19-year-old assassin who calls herself the best in the world." A snort. "She killed and reveled and shopped her way through life and never once apologized for it. She gloried in it. And then this spring, one of my sentinels, Prince Rowan Whitethorn, was tasked to deal with her when she washed up on Wendelin shores. Turns out he fell in love with her instead, and she with him. Turns out Whatever they were doing up in the Cambrian mountains got her to stop calling herself Selena and start going by her true name again. A brutal smile. Aelin Galathinius. Elide could barely feel her body. What? Was about the only word she could manage. Your fire-breathing queen? She's a God's damned assassin, trained to be a killer from the moment your mother died defending her, trained to be no better than the man who butchered your mother and your royal family. Sorry. Elide shook her head, her hands slackening. What? She said again. Lorcan laughed mirthlessly. While you were locked in that tower for 10 years, she was indulging in the riches of Rifthold, spoiled and coddled by her master, the king of the assassins, whom she murdered in cold blood this spring. So you'll find that your long-lost savior is little better than I am. You'll find that she would have killed that man the same as I did, and would have as little tolerance for your whining as I do. Okay. Does he need to talk to her like that? No. She's not whining. Okay. We got a little carried away. It's time to reel it back. It's time to reel it back in. Aelin, an assassin. Aelin, the same person she'd been tasked to give the stone to. You knew, she said. This whole time we've been together, you knew I was looking for the same person. I told you that to find one would be to find the other. You knew, and you didn't tell me. Why? You still haven't told me your secrets. I don't see why I should tell you all of mine, either. She squeezed her eyes shut. Poor Elide is just there. No, literally. Poor Elide! God! Trying to ignore the dark stain on the wood, trying to soothe the sting of his words and seal the hole that had opened beneath her feet. What had been in that amulet? Why had he roared? And your little queen, Lorcan sneered, is a murderer and a thief and a liar. So if you're going to call me such things, then be prepared to fling them at her too. Her skin was too tight, her bones too brittle to bear the anger that took control. She scrambled for the right words to hurt him, wound him, as if they were fistfuls of rocks that she could hurl at Lorcan's head. Elide hissed. I was wrong. I said you and I were the same, that we had no family, no friends, but I have none because land and circumstance separate me from them. You have none because no one can stomach being around you. She tried, and succeeded, if the ire that rippled in his eyes was any indication, to look down her nose at him, even with him towering over her. And you know what the biggest lie you tell everyone, Lorcan? It's that you prefer it that way. But what I hear, when you rant about my bitch queen, all I hear are the words of someone who is deeply, deeply jealous and lonely and pathetic. All I hear are the words of someone who saw Aelin and Prince Rowan fall in love and resented them for their happiness. Because you are so unhappy. Damn. Oh my God. She couldn't stop the words once they started flinging out. So call Aelin a murderer, and a thief, and a liar. Call her a bitch queen, and a fire breather, but forgive me if I take it upon myself to be the judge of those things when I meet her. Which I will do. She pointed to the muddy gray river flowing around them. I'm going to Ilwi. Take me ashore, and I'll wash my hands of you as easily as you washed the blood of that man off yours. Lorcan looked her over, teeth bared enough to show those slightly elongated canines. But she didn't care about his Fey heritage, or his age, or his ability to kill. And after a moment, he went back to pushing the pole against the river bottom, not to bring them to shore, but to guide them along. Did you not hear what I said? Take me to shore. No. Her rage overcame any sort of common sense, any warning from beneath as she stormed over to him. No? He let the pole drag in the water and turned his face to her. No emotion, not even anger, lingered there. The river veered southward 2 miles ago. From the map in the cabin, we can take it straight south and find the fastest route to Banjali. She wiped the rain from her dripping brow as Lorcan brought his face close enough for them to share breath. Turns out I now have business with Aelin Galathinius, too. Congratulations, lady. You just got yourself a guide to Ilwi. A cold, killing light was in his eyes, and she wondered what the hell he'd roared about. But those eyes dipped to her mouth, clamped tight in her rage, and a part of her that had nothing to do with fear went still at the attention, even as other parts went a bit molten. Lorcan's eyes at last found her own, and his voice was a midnight growl as he said, "As far as anyone's concerned, you're still my wife." Could have made them siblings, cousins. No. Wife. Ah! Elide didn't object, even as she walked back into the cabin, his insufferable magic helping with her limp, and slammed the door shut so hard the glass rattled. Storm clouds drifted away to reveal a star-flecked night and a moon bright enough for Lorcan to navigate the narrow, sleepy river. He steered them hour after hour, contemplating precisely how he was going to murder Aelin Galathinius without Elide or Whitethorn getting in the way, and then how he was going to slice up her corpse and feed it to the crows. She had lied to him. She and Whitethorn had tricked him that day the prince had handed over the word key. There'd been nothing inside the amulet but one of those rings, an utterly useless wordstone ring, wrapped in a bit of parchment, and on it was written in a feminine scrawl, "Here's hoping you discover more creative terms than bitch to call me when you find this. With all my love, A.A.G." Damn! Damn! He'd kill her. Slowly. Creatively. He'd been forced to swear a blood promise that Mala's ring truly offered immunity from the Valg when it was worn. He hadn't thought to demand that their word key was real too. And Elide, what Elide carried, what had made him realize it, he'd think about that later. Contemplate what to do with the Lady of Perrinth later. His only consolation was that he'd stolen Mala's ring back, but the little bitch still had the key. And if Elide needed to go to Aelin anyway, well, he'd find Aelin for Elide, and he'd make the Queen of Terrasen crawl before the end of it. Damn. Damn. Chapter 44. The world began and ended in fire. A sea of fire with no room for air, for sound beyond the cascading molten earth. The true heart of fire, the tool of creation and destruction, and she was drowning in it. Its weight smothered her as she thrashed, seeking a surface or a bottom to push off from. Neither existed. As it flooded her throat, surging into her body and melting her apart, she began screaming noiselessly, begging it to a halt. Aelin. That name, roared into the core of flame at the heart of the world, was a beacon, a summons. She'd been born waiting to hear that voice, had blindly sought it her whole life, would follow it into the end of all things. Aelin. Aelin bowed off the bed. Flame in her mouth, her throat, her eyes. Real flame. Golds and blues wove among simmering swaths of reds. Real flame, erupting from her. The sheets scorched, the room and the rest of the bed spared from incineration. The ship in the middle of the sea spared from incineration by an uncompromising, unbreakable wall of air. Hands wrapped in ice squeezed her shoulders, and through the flame, Rowan's snarling face appeared, commanding her to breathe. She took a breath. More flame rushed down her throat. There was no tether, no leash to bring her magic to heal. Oh, gods. She couldn't even feel a burnout threatening nearby. There was nothing but this flame. Rowan gripped her face in his hands, steam rippling where his ice and wind met her fire. You are its master. You control it. Your fear grants it the right to take over. Her body arced off the mattress again, utterly naked. She must have burned her clothes. Rowan's favorite shirt. Her flames burned wilder. He gripped her hard, forcing her to meet his eyes as he snarled, "I see you. I see every part of you, and I'm not afraid. I will not..." No. No, no! Why? No, no, no. I will not be afraid. Fuck you. A line in the burning brightness. My name is Aelin Ashriver Galathinius, and I will not be afraid. Shout out to my boy Sam. As surely as if she grabbed it in her hand, the leash appeared. Darkness flowed in, blessed and calm where the burning pit of flame had raged. She swallowed once, twice. Rowan. Oh, God damn it. I hate that phrase so much. I hate that phrase so much. Y'all don't even... I hate it. His eyes gleamed with near animal brightness, scanning every inch of her. His heartbeat was rampant, thundering, panicked. Rowan, she repeated. Still he did not move, did not stop staring at her, searching for signs of harm. Something in her own chest shifted in his panic. Aylin grasped his shoulder, digging in her nails at the violence rampant on every line of his body, as if he'd loosed whatever leashes he kept on himself in anticipation of fighting to keep her in this body and not some goddess or worse. Calm down. Now. He did no such thing. Rolling her eyes, she tugged his hands from her face to lean over and throw the sheets off them. I am fine, she said, enunciating each word. You saw to that. Now, give me some water. I'm thirsty. A basic, easy command. To serve, in the way he'd explained that Fae males like to be needed, to fulfill some part of them and wanted to fuss and dope. To drag him back up to the level of civilization and reason. Rowan's face was still harsh with feral wrath, and the insidious terror running beneath it. So Aylin leaned in, nipped his jaw, making sure her canines scratched and set onto his skin. If you don't start acting like a prince, you can sleep on the floor. Rowan pulled back, his savage face not wholly of this world, but slowly, as if the words sank in, his features softened. He was still looking pissy, but not so near killing that invisible threat against her. As he leaned in, nipping her jaw in return, and said into her ear, I'm going to make you regret using such threats, princess. Her toes curled, but she gave him a simpering smile as he rose to his feet, every muscle in his naked body rippling with the movement, and watched him pad with feline grace to the washstand, and ewer atop it. Ewer? Whatever. The bastard had some nerve to look her over as he lifted the jug, and then give her a satisfied male smile as he poured a glass right to the brim, halting with expert precision. She debated sending a lick of flame to burn his bare ass as he set down the jug with emphasized care and calm, and then stalked back to the bed, eyes on her every step of the way, and set the water on the small table beside it. Aylin rose on surprisingly steady knees and faced him. Only the creaking of the ship and hissing of the waves against it filled the room. What was that? She asked quietly. His eyes shuddered. It was me losing control. Why? He glanced at the porthole and moon-kissed sea beyond, so rare for him to avoid her stare. Why? She pushed. Rowan at last met her gaze. I didn't know if she'd taken you again. No matter that the word key now lay beside the bed and not around her neck. Even when I realized you were just in the magic's thrall, the magic took you away. It's been a long time since I wasn't certain, since I didn't know how to get you back. He bared his teeth, losing a jagged breath, the wrath now directed inward. Before you call me a territorial Fae bastard, allow me to apologize and explain that it is very difficult, Rowan. He stilled. She crossed the small lingering distance between them, every step like the answer to some question she'd asked from the moment her soul had sparked into existence. You're not human. I do not expect you to be. He almost seemed to recoil, but she put a hand on his bare chest, over his heart. It still thundered beneath her palm. She said softly, feeling that heart beneath her hand, I do not care if you are a Fae or human, if you are a Valg or a God's damned... I'm not saying that word. You are what you are. And what I want, what I need, Rowan, is someone who does not apologize for it, for who they are. You have never once done so. She leaned forward to kiss the bare skin where her hand had been. Please don't start doing it now. Yes, sometimes you piss me the hell off with that Fae territorial nonsense, but I heard your voice. It woke me up. It led me out of that place. He bowed his head until his brow leaned against hers. I wish I had more to offer you during this war and beyond it. She slid her arms around his bare waist. You offer me more than I ever hoped for. He seemed to object, but she said, and I figured since both Darrow and Rolf informed me I needed to sell my hand in marriage for the sake of this war, I should do the opposite. A snort. Typical. But if Terrason needs... Here's the way I see it, she said, pulling back to examine his harsh face. We do not have the luxury of time, and a marriage to a foreign kingdom, with its contracts and distances, plus the months it takes to raise and send an army. We do not have that time. We only have now. And what I don't need is a husband who will try to get into a pissing contest with me, or who I'll have to cloister somewhere for his own safety, or who will hide in a corner while I wake up with flames all around me. She kissed his tattooed chest again, right over that mighty, thundering heart. This, Rowan, this is all I need. Just this. The reverberations of his deep, rattling breath echoed in her cheek, and he stroked a hand over her hair, along her bare back, lower. A court that can change the world. She kissed the corner of his mouth. We'll find a way. Together. The words he'd given her once. The words that had begun the healing of her shattered heart, and his own. Did I hurt? Her words were a rasp. No. He brushed a thumb over her cheekbone. No, you didn't hurt me. Or anything else. Something in her chest caved in, and Rowan gathered her in his arms as she buried her face in his neck. His calloused hands caressed her back, over each and every scar and the tattoos he'd inked on her. If we survive this war, she murmured after a while onto his bare chest, you and I are going to have to learn how to relax, to sleep through the night. If we survive this war, Princess, he said, running a finger down the groove of her spine. I'll be happy to do anything you want, even learn how to relax. And if we never have a moment's peace, even after we get the lock, the keys, and send Erwin back to this hellhole realm, the amusement faded, replaced by something more intent as his fingers stilled on her back. Even if we have threats of war every other day, even if we have to host fussy emissaries, even if we have to visit god-awful kingdoms and play nice, I'll be happy to do it, if you're at my side. Her lips trembled. Ugh, you. Since when did you learn to make such pretty speeches? I just needed the right excuse to learn, he said, kissing her. This corny-ass shit. Her body went taut and molten in all the right places as his mouth moved. Oh. I love you, Rowan breathed onto her skin. And, I'd walk into the burning heart of hell itself to find you. He almost had mere minutes ago, she wanted to say, but Aelin only arched her back a bit more. Oh. 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 Damn. Damn. Anyway, Man in Blackbeak awoke. There had been no sound, no smell, no hint of why she'd awoken, but those predatory instincts had sensed something amiss and sent her tumbling from sleep. She blinked as she sat up, her wound now a dull ache, and found her head clear for whatever the haze had been. The room was near black, save for the moonlight that trickled through the porthole to illuminate her cramped cabin. How long had she been lost to sleep in hideous melancholy? She listened carefully to the creaking of the ship. A faint grumbling sounded from above. Abraxas, still alive, still sleeping, if she knew that drowsy, wheezing grumble. She tested the manacles on her wrists, lifting them to peer at the lock. A clever sort of contraption, the chains thick and anchored soundly into the wall. Her ankles were no better. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been in chains. How had Elite endured it for a decade? Maybe she'd find the girl when she got out of here. She doubted the Havillard King had any news of the 13 anyway. She'd sneak onto Abraxas's back, fly for the coast, and find a lead before tracking down her coven. And then, she didn't know what she'd do. But it was better than lying here like a worm in the sun, letting whatever despair had seized control these days or weeks wreak havoc on her. But as if she'd summoned him, the door opened. Dorian stood there, a candle in his... not a candle. Pure flame wreathed his fingers, set his sapphire eyes glowing bright as he found her lucid. Was it you who sent that ripple of power? No, though it didn't take much guessing to suspect who it had been. Who it had been then, sorry. Witches don't have magic like that. He angled his head, his blue-black hair stained gold by his flames. But you're long-lived. She nodded, and he took that as an invitation to slide into his usual chair. It's called the yielding, she said, a chill brushing down her spine. The bit of magic we have. We usually cannot summon or wield, but for one moment in a witch's life, she can summon great power to unleash upon her enemies. The cost is that she is incinerated in the blast, her body yielded to the darkness. In the witch wars, witches on both sides made yieldings during every battle and skirmish. It's suicide, to blow yourself into smithereens and take enemies with you. It is, and it's not pretty. As the Iron-Teeth Witch yields life to the darkness, its power fills her and unleashes from her in an ebony wave, a manifestation of what lies in our souls. Have you seen it done? Once, by a scared young witch who knew she wouldn't win glory any other way. Only she took out half of our Iron-Teeth force as well as the Crochans. Her mind snagged on the word. Crochans. Her people. Not her people. She was a goddamned Blackbeak. Will the Iron-Teeth use it on us? If you're facing lower-level covens, yes. Older covens are too arrogant, too skilled to choose the yielding instead of fighting their way out. But younger, weaker covens get spooked, or wish to win valor through sacrifice. It's murder. It's war. War is sanctioned murder, no matter what side you're on. Ire flickered on his face, and she asked, "Have you ever killed a man?" He opened his mouth to say no, but the light in his hand died. He had. When he'd been collared, she guessed. The Valg inside him had done it, multiple times, and not cleanly. "Remember what they made you do," Manon said, "when you faced them again." "I doubt I'll ever forget it, witchling." He stood, heading for the door. Manon said, "These chains are rubbing my skin raw. Surely you've some sympathy for chained things." Dorian paused. She lifted her hands, displaying the chains. "I'll give my word not to do any harm." "It's not my call. Now that you're talking again, maybe telling Aelin what she's been pushing you about will get you on her good side." Manon had no idea what the Queen had been demanding of her. None. "The longer I stay in here, princeling, the more likely I am to do something stupid when you release me. Let me at least feel the wind on my face." "You've got a window. Go stand in front of it." He's such a bitch. Part of her sat up straight at the harshness, the maleness in that tone, and the set of those broad shoulders. She purred. "If I had been asleep, would you have lingered to stare at me for a while?" Icy amusement gleamed there. Would you have objected? And perhaps she was reckless and wild, and still a bit stupid from blood loss, but she said, "If you plan to sneak in here in the darkest hours of night, you should at least have the decency to ensure I get something out of it." His lips twitched, though the smile was cold and sensuous in a way that made her wonder what playing with a king blessed with raw magic might be like, if he'd make her beg for the first time in a long time. He looked capable of it, perhaps willing to let a little cruelty into the bedroom. "Okay," her blood thrummed. "As tempting as seeing you naked and chained might be." A soft lover's laugh. "I don't think you'd enjoy the loss of control. And you've been with so many women to be able to judge a witch's wants so easily." That smile turned lazy. "A gentleman never tells." "How many?" He was only 20, though he was a prince, now a king. Women had likely been falling over themselves for him since his voice had deepened. "How many men have you been with?" he countered. She smirked, enough to know how to handle the needs of mortal princelings, to know what will make you beg. Oh, never mind that she was contemplating the opposite. He drifted across the room, past the range of her chains, right into her own breathing space. Oh my God. He leaned over her, nearly nose to nose, nothing at all amused in his face, and the cut of his cruel, beautiful mouth, as he said, "I don't think you can handle the sort of things I need, witchling, and I am never begging for anything again in my life." And then he left. Oh. Damn, he iced her out. He iced her ass out. Manon stared after him, a hiss of rage slipping from her own lips at the opportunities she hadn't taken to grab him, hold him hostage, and demand her freedom, at the arrogance in his assumption, at the heat that had gathered in her core and now throbbed incessantly, but enough that she clammed her legs together. She had never been denied. Men had fallen to pieces, sometimes literally, to crawl into bed with her, and she didn't know what she would have done if he had taken her up on her offer, if she would have decided to learn what the king could do exactly. Okay, a distraction, and an excuse to loathe herself even more, she supposed. She was still seething at the door when it opened again. Dorian leaned against the aged wood, his eyes still glazed in a way she couldn't tell was lust or hatred, or both. He slid the lock shut without looking at it. What? Her heartbeat picked up. What? What's going on? Hold on. Her heartbeat picked up. Her entire immortal focus narrowed to his steady, unhurried breathing, the unreadable face. His voice was rough as he said, "I won't waste my breath telling you how stupid it would be to try to take me hostage. I won't waste mine telling you to take only what I offer you and nothing more." Her ears strained to listen, but even his damned heart was a solid beat, not a whiff of fear. He said, "I need to hear you say yes." His eyes flicked to the chains. It took her a moment to comprehend, but she let out a low laugh. "So considerate, princeling. But yes, I do this of my own free will. It can be our little secret." Are you fucking kidding me? What is... Are they what? No. She was nothing and no one now anyway. Sharing a bed with her enemy was nothing compared to the Crochan blood that flowed in her veins. Wait. Am I about to watch my husband cheat on me right now? For real? She began to unbutton the white shirt she'd been wearing for God's knew how long, but he growled, "I'll do it myself." Like hell he would. She touched the second button. Invisible hands wrapped around her. Oh! Oh! But Dorian pulled back, studying her eyes with a cool detachment. Hold on, y'all. Oh my God! Whatever he beheld there made him step away. The invisible fingers on her wrist vanished. The door unlatched, and that cocky grin returned as Dorian shrugged with one shoulder and said, "Maybe another night, witchling." Ah! Manon almost bellowed as he slipped out the door and did not return. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. You're joking me. Chapter 45. Oh my... I got a little hot in here. Chapter 45. I would be too. I think I might have cried. I think I would have cried. Absolutely. I would have cried. I would have cried. The witch was lucid but pissed off. Adian had the pleasure of serving her breakfast and tried not to note the lingering scent of female arousal in the cabin, or that Dorian's scent had entwined among it. The king was entitled to move on, Adian reminded himself hours later, as he scanned the late afternoon horizon from the ship's helm. In the quiet hours of his watches, he'd often mulled over the thorough scolding Lysandra had given him regarding his anger and cruelty toward the king. And maybe, just maybe, Lysandra was right. And maybe the fact that Dorian could even look at a female with interest after seeing Sorsha beheaded was a miracle, but the witch? That was what he wanted to tangle with? He asked Lysandra as much when she joined him 30 minutes later, still soaked from patrolling the waters ahead. All clear. Lysandra finger-combed her inky sheet of hair, frowning. I had clients who lost their wives or lovers and wanted something to distract them, wanted the opposite of who their beloved had been, perhaps to make the act feel wholly separate. What he went through would change anyone. He might very well find himself now attracted to dangerous things. He already had a penchant for them, Adian murmured, glancing to where Aelin and Rowan sparred on the main deck, sweat gleaming golden as the afternoon light shifted toward evening. Dorian perched on the nearby steps to the quarterdeck. Damaris braced over his knees, half awake in the heat. Part of Adian smiled, knowing Rowan would no doubt kick his ass for it. Aelin was dangerous, but still human, Lysandra observed. Manon is not. He probably likes it that way, and I'd stay out of it if I were you. I'm not getting in the middle of that disaster, don't worry. Though I wouldn't let those iron teeth near my favorite part if I were him. Adian grinned as Lysandra tipped her head back and laughed. He added, besides, watching Aelin and the witch go head-to-head this morning about a lead was enough to remind me to stay the hell back and enjoy the spectacle. Little Elide Lock-in, alive and out there, searching for them. Gods above. The look on Aelin's face when Manon had revealed detail after detail what Vernon had tried to do to the girl. There would be a reckoning in Paranth for sure. For that, Adian himself would hang the Lord by his intestines while Vernon was still breathing, and then he'd get started on paying Vernon back for the 10 years of horror Elide had endured, for the maimed foot and the chains, for the tower. Locked in a tower, in a city he'd visited so many times in the past 10 years he had no count. She might have even watched the Bane from that spire as they came and left the city, possibly thinking he'd forgotten or didn't care about her either. And now she was out there, alone. She's not alone. With a permanently mangled foot, no training and no weapons. If she was lucky, perhaps she'd run into the Bane first. His commanders would recognize her name, protect her. That is, if she dared to reveal herself at all. It had taken all his self-control not to strangle Manon for abandoning the girl in the middle of Oakwald, for not flying her right to Terrasen. Aelin, however, hadn't bothered with restraint. 2 strikes, both so fast even the wing leader didn't see them. A backhanded blow to Manon's face for leaving the lead, then a ring of fire around Manon's throat, slamming her into the wood as Aelin made her swear the information was correct. Rowan had dryly reminded Aelin that Manon was responsible for Elide's escape and rescue too. Aelin had merely said if Manon hadn't been, the fire would have already been down her throat. And that was that. Aelin, from the fever with which she sparred with Rowan across the deck, was still pissed. The witch, from the snarling and scent in her cabin, was still pissed. Adian was more than ready to get to the stone marshes, even if what awaited them there might not be so pleasant. 3 more days lay between them and the eastern coast, and then they'd all see how much Rolf's alliance was worth, if the man could be trusted. You can't avoid him forever, you know, Lysandra said, drawing his attention to the other reason he needed to get off this ship. His father sat near where Abraxas had curled along the prow, guarding and observing the wyvern, learning how to kill them, where to strike. No matter that the wyvern was little more than an oversized hound, docile enough that they hadn't bothered to chain him. They had none big enough anyway, and the beast would likely refuse to leave the ship until Manon did. Abraxas only moved to hunt for fish or larger game, Lysandra escorting him in sea dragon form beneath the waves, and when the beast was sprawled on the deck, the lion kept him company. Adian had barely spoken to Gavriel since Skulls Bay. I'm not avoiding him, Adian said. I just have no interest in talking to him. Lysandra flipped her wet hair over his shoulder, frowning at the damp splotches on her white shirt. I, for one, would like to hear the story of how he crossed paths with your mother. He's kind, for one of Maeve's cadre. Better than Fenris. Indeed, Fenris made Adian want to shatter things. That laughing face, the swaggering, dark arrogance. It was another mirror, he realized, but one who tracked Aelin everywhere like some dog, or wolf, he supposed. Adian hadn't pitted himself against the male in the sparring ring, but he'd carefully watched Fenris take on Rowan and Gavriel, both of whom had trained the male. Fenris fought as he'd expect a warrior with centuries of training by 2 lethal killers to fight, but he had not glimpsed another whisper of the magic that followed Fenris to leap between places as if walking through some invisible doorway, as if his thoughts summoned the immortal warrior. Fenris swaggered out from the shadows below deck and smirked at them all before taking up his sentry post near the foremast. They were all on a schedule of watches and patrols. Lysandra and Rowan usually tasked with flying far out of sight to survey behind and ahead or communicate with the 2 escort ships. Adian hadn't dared tell the shifter that he often counted the minutes until she returned, that his chest always felt unbearably tight until he spotted whatever winged or finned form she wore returning to them. Like his cousin, he had no doubt the shifter wouldn't take well to his fussing. Lysandra was carefully watching Aelin and Rowan, their blades like quicksilver, as they met each other blow for blow. "You've been doing well with your lessons," Adian told the shifter. Lysandra's green eyes crinkled. They'd all been taking turns walking the shifter through handling various weapons in hand-to-hand combat. Lysandra knew from some of her time with Arabin. He taught her as a way of ensuring the survival of his investment, she told him. But she wanted to know more, how to kill men in a myriad of ways. It shouldn't have thrilled him as much as it had. Not when she'd laughed off the claim Adian had made on the beach that day in Skulls Bay. She hadn't mentioned it again. He hadn't been stupid enough to either. Aww. Adian trailed Lysandra, unable to help it, as she drifted toward where the Queen and Prince sparred, Dorian scooting over on the steps to silently offer her a space. Adian marked the gesture and the king's respect, shoving aside his own wearing feelings about it as he lingered above them and focused on his cousin and Rowan. But they'd worked themselves into an impasse, enough so that Rowan called it off and sheathed his sword, then flicked Aelin's nose as she looked pissy at not winning. Adian laughed under his breath, glancing to the shifter as the Queen and Prince strode for the water jug and glasses against the stair railing and helped themselves. He was about to offer Lysandra a final round in the ring before the sunset when Dorian braced his arms on his knees and said to Aelin through the stair railing, "I don't think she'll do anything if we let her out." Aelin took a dainty sip of her water, still breathing hard. "Did you arrive at that conclusion before, during, or after you visited her in the middle of the night?" "Oh, gods. It was going to be that sort of conversation." Dorian gave a half-smile. "You have a preference for immortal warriors. Why can't I?" It was the faint click of her glass on the small table that made Adian brace himself, really start calculating the layout of the various decks. Fenry still monitored them from the foremast. Lysandra remained on Dorian's side. He supposed that standing above Dorian on the stairs and Aelin beside them, he'd be right in the middle. Exactly where he'd sworn not to be. Rowan on the other side of Aelin said to Dorian, "Is there a reason, Majesty, that you believe the witch should be free?" Aelin shot him a look of pure flame. "Good. Let the prince deal with her wrath. Even days after the..." Okay, we're almost done. Sorry, my phone is dying. That's why I'm checking how many pages we have left, because I don't want it to die while I'm reading. Even days after the claiming that had left everyone pretending they didn't notice the 2 puncture wounds on Rowan's neck, or the delicate, vicious scratches over his shoulders, the Fey Prince still looked like a male who had barely survived a storm and had enjoyed every wild second of it. Not to mention the twin wounds on Aelin's neck this morning. He'd almost begged her to find a scarf. Why don't we lock one of you in a room?" Dorian pointed with his chin at the Fey warriors across the deck, at Lysandra to his right, "and see how well you fare after so much time." Aelin said, "Every inch of her has been designed to ensnare men, to make them think she's harmless." "Trust me, Man in Blackbeak is anything but harmless." Aelin charged on. "She and her kind are killers. They are raised without conscience. Regardless of what her grandmother did to her, she will always be that way. I will not endanger the lives of the people on this ship so you can sleep better at night." Her eyes shone with the unspoken jab. They all shifted, and Adian was about to ask Lysandra to spar. Conversation closed when Dorian said a bit too quietly, "I am king, you know." Oh. It was a bit icky. That was a bit gross. But I get it. He feels out of control. No power. But I think I would have punched him in his mouth if he said that. Turquoise and gold eyes snapped to Dorian. Adian could almost see the words Aelin fought to think through, her temper begging her to shut down the challenge. With a few choice sentences, she could fillet his spirit like a fish, further shredding the scraps of the man who remained after the Valg prince had violated him, and in doing so, lose a strong ally she'd need not just in this war, but if they survived it. And those eyes softened a bit. A friend. She'd lose that too. I just don't... it was the pulling rank for me, because he's a king, but she's also a queen. I don't blame Aelin for not trusting Manon, because Manon is very dangerous, and they don't know why she's there, if she's on their side, like, what she plans to do if she... Like, I can understand why Aelin wouldn't want Manon to just be roaming around free, but at the same time, I can see why Dorian is like, well, she's not even, like, she wouldn't do anything, you know? Yeah, I can see both sides. I feel like she's pulling rank, and I feel like he's saying I have as much stake in this as you do. Okay, yeah, very true. I just feel like Aelin has a very hard time loosening control. She's very controlling, and she doesn't like to feel out of control, but at the same time, like, I don't know. I can see it from both sides, but I just don't like how he worded that. Aelin rubbed at the scars on her wrists, stark in the golden light of the setting sun, ones that made Adian sick to look at. She said to Dorian after a moment, "Controlled movements. If she leaves the room, she stays under guard. One of the Fae at any given time, plus one of us. Shackles on her wrists, not feet. No chains for the room, but a guard outside the door." Adian caught the thumb Rowan brushed over one of those scars on her wrist. Dorian just said, "Fine." Adian debated telling the king that a compromise from Aelin should be outright celebrated. Aelin's voice dropped to that lethal purr. "After you finished flirting with her that day in Oakwald, she and her coven tried to kill me." "You provoked her," Dorian countered, "and I sit here today because of what she risked when she came to Rifthold. Twice." Damn, that is very true. Aelin wiped the sweat from her brow. "She has her own reasons, and I highly doubt it was because she, in her 100 years of killing, decided your pretty face would turn her good. Yours turned Rowan from 3 centuries of a blood oath." And it was Adian's father who said calmly, as he left his perch near Abraxas on the prow to approach them, "I suggest, Majesty, that you pick another argument." Indeed, Adian's every instinct came to attention at the frozen anger now lining the prince's every muscle. Dorian noticed it too, and said perhaps a bit guiltily, "I meant no offense, Rowan." Gavriel angled his head, golden hair sliding over his broad shoulder, and said with the ghost of a smile, "Don't worry, Majesty. Fenris has given Whitethorn enough shit for it to last him for another 3 centuries. Adian blinked at the humor, the hint of a smile, but Aelin saved him the effort of deciding whether or not to answer that smile by saying to Dorian, "Well, let's see if the wing leader would like to take a turn about the deck before dinner." Dorian was right to look wary, Adian decided, but Aelin was already heading for the opposite side of the deck, Fenris peeling off from his post by the foremast, that edged, bitter gaze sliding over them all while they passed. But Fenris would follow, no doubt. Like hell would they unleash the witch without all of them there. Even the Cadres seemed to understand that. So Adian trailed after his queen into the dimness of the ship, night setting in above them, and prayed Aelin and Manon weren't about to rip the boat to shreds. Climbing into bed with a witch. Aelin ground her teeth as she headed for Manon's room. Dorian had once been notorious when it came to women. But this, Aelin snorted, wishing Cale were present, if only to see the look on his face. Even if it eased something tight in her chest to know Cale and Philippe were in the south, perhaps raising an army to cross the narrow sea and march northward, if they were all lucky. If... Aelin hated that word, but her friendship with Dorian was precarious enough. She'd yielded to his request partially out of some scrap of kindness, but mostly because she knew there was more Manon had to tell them about Morath, about Erwin, lots more. and she doubted the witch would be forthcoming, especially when Aelin had lost her temper just a little bit this morning, and maybe it made her a conniving, hideous person for using Dorian's interest as a veil to butter up the witch, but it was war. Aelin flexed her hand as she neared the witch's room, the light swaying in the rougher waves they'd encountered since midday. Rowan had healed the bruise on his back of her knuckles from the blow she'd dealt the witch, and she'd thanked him by locking the door to the room and getting on her knees before him. Oh. Ew! Rowan now took a step beside her, whipping his head in her direction. What the hell are you thinking about? But his pupils had flared enough that she was well aware he knew precisely where her mind had gone as they walked down the witch's cabin. That Fenris hung far back down the hall told her enough about the change in her scent. They have no shame. They have no shame. The usual things, she shot back at Rowan with a simpering smile. Killing, crocheting, how to make... Oh, Rowan's face took on a pained expression that had her grinning, especially as his throat bobbed while he swallowed hard. Okay. Aelin nearly walked into the doorpost of Manon's open cabin. Rowan's low laugh made her stop smiling like a lust-addled, love-sick idiot. Manon was sitting upright in bed, golden eyes darting between Rowan and Dorian and her. Fenris slid in behind them, his attention going right to the witch, no doubt stunned by the beauty, the grace, the blah 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 perfectness of her. Perfectness. Manon said low and flat, "Who's this?" Dorian lifted a brow, following her gaze. "You've met him before. He's Fenris, sworn warrior of Queen Maeve." It was the narrowing of Manon's eyes that had some instinct prickling, the flare of the witch's nostrils as she scented the male, his smell barely detectable in the cramped cabin. "No, he's not." "Huh?" The witch's iron nails flashed out a heartbeat before Fenris struck. "What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck?" Who is that then? Who is that? No. What the fuck? Did I read that shit right? No, he's not. What the fuck? This bitch, whoever he is, I don't know who he is, fooled every single person. Wait, so it was never Fenris? I mean, I know I'm gonna find out. Okay, hold on. But if it was, so let's go from the hypotheticals, right? It was never Fenris. It was never him. He duped every single bitch on this boat. The second he steps foot in front of Manon, she's like, "That's not him." Oh my, what the fuck? Chapter 46. It was still instinct to go for a knife before Aelin went for her magic. And as Fenris leaped for Manon, okay, who the fuck is this? Who? I was not expecting this. And as Fenris leapt for Manon with a snarl, it was Rowan's power that sent him slamming through the room. Before the male had finished sliding across the floor, Aelin had a wall of flame up between them. "What the hell?" she spat. On his knees, Fenris clawed at his throat, at the air Rowan was choking off. The cabin was too small for them all to fit without getting too close. Eyes danced at Dorian's fingertips as he slid beside Manon, still chained by the bed. "What did you mean? That's not Fenris," Aelin said to the witch without taking her eyes off him. Rowan let out a grunt behind her, and Aelin watched with a mix of horror and fascination as Fenris's chest expanded in a mighty breath as he got to his feet and surveyed that wall of flame, as if Rowan's magic had worn off. And as Fenris's skin seemed to glow and melt away, as a creature as pale as fresh snow emerged from the vanishing illusion, Aelin gave Aedion a subtle look over her shoulder. Her cousin instantly moved, keys to Manon's chains appearing from his pocket, but Manon didn't move as the thing took form. All the spindly limbs, its wings tucked in tight, the hideous warped face sniffing at them. Manon's chains clanked free. Aelin said to the thing beyond her wall of flame, "What are you?" Manon answered for it. Erwin's bloodhound. What the fuck? Is Fenris dead? Was he ever there? Is Gavriel... No, Gavriel is real. Okay, hold on. This makes no sense. Because Fenris was... He was, like, saying things. Like, he knew who he was. Where is Fenris? Where is he? Is he dead? Was everything just a lie? The thing smiled, revealing rotted black stumps of teeth. At your service, it said. She said. Aelin realized that she noted the small, shriveled breasts on its narrow chest. So your gut stayed in, it purred to Manon. Where is Fenris? Aelin demanded. The bloodhound smile didn't falter. On patrol of the ship. On another level, I assume. Unaware, just as you were unaware, that one of your own wasn't truly with you while I... What the fuck? How big is this fucking ship? How big is this ship? That he's just... What the fuck? Another talker, Aelin said, flipping her braid over her shoulder. Let me guess. You killed a sailor, took his place, learned what you needed to about how to get Manon off this ship and our patrols, and what? You plan to carry her off into the night? Aelin frowned at the thing's thin body. You look like you could barely lift a fork, and haven't in months. The bloodhound blinked at her, then hissed. Manon let out a low laugh. Aelin said, Honestly, you could have just snuck in here and saved yourself 1,000 stupid steps. Shifter, the thing hissed, hungrily enough that Aelin's words stumbled. Its enormous eyes had gone right to Lysandra, snarling softly in the corner of the ghost leopard form. Shifter, it hissed again, that longing twisting its features. And Aelin had a feeling she knew what this thing had begun as, what Oh. Sorry, my phone's dying. Yeah, it's dying. Okay. What Erwin had trapped and mutilated in the mountains around Morath. As I was saying, Aelin drawled as best she could, you really brought this upon yourself. I came for the Blackbeak heir. The bloodhound panted. But look at you all. A trove worth your weight in gold. Its eyes went murky, as if it were no longer here, as if it had drifted into another room. Shit. Aelin attacked with her flame. The bloodhound screamed, and Aelin's flame melted away into steam. Rowan was instantly there, shoving her back, sword out, her magic. You should have given me the witch. The bloodhound laughed, and ripped the porthole clean out. Oh, they're dead. Oh, they're gonna drown. Clean out of the side of the ship. Now he knows who you travel with, what ship you sail. Bro. Broski, they're done for. They're done for. They might as well just pack it up right now. I'm gonna plug my phone in because if it dies while I'm reading this shit, I'm gonna be pissed. I'm gonna be pissed. Let's see. There is no optimism in this book, in this series. None. You cannot have optimism in this series. Where is it? The creature lunged for the hole it had hewn in the side of the ship, spindrift misting in. A black-tipped arrow slammed into its knee, then another. The bloodhound went down an inch from freedom. Snarling as he stepped into the room, Fenris fired another. Oh, there he is. There's my man. There he is. Hey, babe. Pinning its shoulder into the wood planks. Apparently, he didn't take well to being impersonated. He gave Rowan a seething look that said as much, and that demanded how they all hadn't noticed the difference. But the bloodhound wrenched herself up, black blood spraying the room, filling it with her reek. Aelin had a dagger angled, ready to fly. Manon was about to pounce. Rowan's hatchet was cocked. The bloodhound chucked a strap of black leather into the center of the room. Manon stopped dead. Um, um, mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. Y'all did not tell me today would be a hoodie thing. Y'all did not tell me today would be a hoodie. Oh my God. No. 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 Y'all are joking. This is a joke. Y'all are joking. I was not warned. Your second screamed when Erwin broke her, the bloodhound said. His dark majesty sends this to remember her by. Aelin didn't dare take her eyes off the creature, but she could have sworn Manon swayed. And then the bloodhound said to the witch, a gift from a king of the Valg to the last living Crochan queen. It was all for nothing. It was all for nothing. It was all for nothing. Manon stared at that braided leather band, the one Astrid had worn every day, even when battle did not demand it, and did not care what the bloodhound had declared to the others, did not care if she was heir to the Blackbeak witch clan or queen of the Crochans. She did not care if Manon did not finish the thought over the roar that silenced everything in her head, the roar that came out of her mouth as she launched herself at the bloodhound. The arrows through the beast scratched at Manon as she tackled that dewy, bony body into the wood. Claws and teeth slashed for her face, but Manon got her hands around that neck, and iron tore through damp skin. Then those claws were pinned to the wood beneath phantom hands as Dorian sauntered over, face so unyieldingly unmoved. The bloodhound thrashed, those claws trying to wrench free. The creature screamed as those invisible hands crunched down on bone, then threw it. Manon gave to the severed hands a moment before the bloodhound screamed, so loud her own ears rang, but Dorian crooned, "Be done with it." Manon lifted her other hand, wanting iron to shred her and not steel. The others watched behind them, weapons ready, but the bloodhound panted. "Don't you want to know what your second said before she died?" "So she's dead. So she's dead? For real? She's dead for real?" This is all he said, she said. This is all, but she has the leather band. How can she not? Oh my God. There's no way it was all for nothing. I'm gonna be sick. Hold on. Because if 2 + 2 is indeed 4, what the fuck? What was it all for? I mean, I get what it was all for in the end, because she got out, and she's gonna be like this child of peace now, and she's gonna help Aelin and take down Erwin. But like, what was it all for? Realistically, what did we do all that for? Like, is she just gonna die? What was it all for? Oh my God! There's no way. Manon hesitated. What a horrible brand on her stomach. Oh, there it is. That's the final. That's the proof. That's the proof right there. That's the proof. That's all the proof I needed. Oh God. Oh God. I'm gonna be sick. Oh God. Y'all. Oh my God. If they had Astrid, that means they got the rest of those bitches too. Damn. Oh, damn. Oh, damn. 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 Oh, God. Oh. Unclean. Did you do that yourself, Blackbeak? No. No. A baby. She said she'd birthed a stillborn witchling. Manon froze entirely, and didn't particularly care as the bloodhound lunged for her throat, teeth bared. It was not flame or wind that snapped the bloodhound's neck, but invisible hands. The crunch echoed through the room, and Manon whirled on Dorian Havillard. His sapphire eyes were utterly merciless. Manon snarled, "How dare you take my kill?" Men on the deck began screaming, and Abraxas roared. Abraxas. Manon turned on her heel and sprinted through the wall of warriors, careening down the hall, up the stairs. Her iron nails tore chunks out of the slippery wood as she hauled herself up, stomach aching. Muggy night air hit her, then the sea scent, then there were 6 of them. Their skin was not bone white like the bloodhounds, but rather a molted darkness, bred for shadows and stealth, winged, all with humanoid faces and bodies. Ilkin. One of them hissed as it disemboweled the man in one swipe of its claws. "We are the Ilkin, and we have come to feast." Indeed, pirates were dead on the deck, blood a coppery tang that filled her senses as she raced for where Abraxas's roar had sounded. But he was airborne, flapping high, tail swinging, the shapeshifter in wyvern form at his side, taking on 3 of the smaller figures, so much more nimble as they flame blasted into the night, along with wind and ice. One Ilkin melted, the second had its wings snapped, and the third froze into a solid block and shattered upon the deck. 8 more Ilkin landed, one ripping into a screaming sailor's neck on the foredeck. Manon's iron teeth snapped down, flame blasted again, spearing for the approaching terrors, only for them to sail through it. The ship became a melee? Super Smash Brothers melee. Super Smash Brothers. Melee? Y'all, I know this word. Why can't I say it? Super Smash Brothers. Melee. Whatever. I can't get it. My mind is somewhere else right now. As wings and talons tore into delicate human hides, as the immortal warriors unleashed themselves upon the Ilkin that landed on the deck. Adian hurtled after Aelin the moment the wyvern roared. He got as far as the main deck before those things attacked, before Aelin's flame ruptured from the deck ahead, and he realized his cousin could look after herself because, shit, the Val King had been busy. Ilkin, they'd called themselves. There were 2 of them now before him on the quarterdeck, where he'd run to spare the first mate and captain from having their organs ripped out of their bellies. Both beasts were nearly 8 feet and born of nightmares, but in their eyes, those were human eyes, and their sense, like rotted meat, but human, partially. They stood between him and the stairs back to the main deck. "What a bounty this hunt has yielded," one said. Adian didn't dare take his attention off them, though he vaguely heard Aelin ordering Rowan to go help the other ships, vaguely heard a wolf and a lion snarl, and felt the kiss of cold as eyes slammed into the world. Adian gripped his sword, flipping it once, twice. Had the pirate lord sold him out to Morath? The way that bloodhound had looked at Lysandra. His rage became a song in his blood. I feel like I'm not being given time to process what the fuck we just learned. Like I'm not being given the appropriate amount of time to process the fact that all of the 13 are probably dead. If not all of the 13, then for sure Astrid. They sized him up, and Adian flipped his sword again. 2 against 1. He might stand a chance. That was when the third lunged from the shadows behind him. Okay, but he's not gonna die. I don't want to do any of this. I just want to know what happened to the 13. Aelin killed one with Goldrin, beheading. The other two, they hadn't been too pleased by it, if their incessant shrieking in the moments following was any indication. A lion's roar cleaved the night, and Aelin prayed Gabriel was with Adian somewhere. The two in front of her, blocking the way below decks, finally stopped their hissy fits long enough to ask, "Where are your flames now?" Aelin opened her mouth, but then Fenris leapt out of a patch of night as if he'd simply run through a doorway and slammed into the one nearest. He had a score to settle, it seemed. Fenris's jaw went around the Ilkin's throat, and the other whirled claws out. She was not fast enough to stop it as two sets of claws slashed through the white coat. Through the shield he kept on himself, and Fenris's cry of pain barked across the water. Twin swords of flame plunged into the two Ilkin necks. Heads rolled onto the blood-slicked deck. Fenris staggered back, making it all of a step before he crashed to the planks. Aelin surged for him, swearing. Blood and bone and greenish slime. Poison, like those on the wyvern's tails. Like blowing out 1,000 candles, she pushed aside her flame. Rallied that healing water. Fenris shifted back into a male, his teeth clenched, swearing low and vicious, a hand against his torn ribs. "Don't move," she told him. She'd immediately sent Rowan to the other ships, and he'd tried to argue but had obeyed. She had no idea where the wing leader was, the Crochin Queen. Aelin readied her magic, trying to calm her raging heart. "The others," panted Adian, limping for them, coated in black blood, "are fine." She almost sobbed in relief until she noticed the way her cousin's eyes shone, and that Gavriel, bloodied and limping worse than Adian, was a step behind his son. What the fuck? What the hell had happened? What is going on? Fenris groaned, and she focused on his wounds, that poison slithering into his blood. She opened her mouth to tell Fenris to lower his hand when wings flapped, not the kind she loved. Adian was instantly before them, sword out, grimacing in pain, but one of the Ilkin lifted a claw-tipped hand. Parley. Her cousin halted, but Gavriel shifted imperceptibly closer to the Ilkin as it sniffed at Fenris and smiled. "Don't bother," the thing told Aelin, laughing quietly. "He won't have much longer to live." "You're joking. You're joking." Adian snarled, palming his fighting knives. Aelin rallied her flame. Only the hottest of her fire could kill them. Anything less and they remained unscathed. She'd think about the long-term implications of it later. "I was sent to deliver a message," Ilkin said, smiling over her shoulder toward the horizon. "Thank you for confirming in Skull's Bay that you carry what His Dark Majesty needs." Aelin's stomach dropped to her feet. The key. Erwin knew she had the word key. "Well, this has all gone to shit, hasn't it? This has all gone to fucking shit! Hasn't it? We're just... It's not looking too good. Once again. It's not looking too fucking good. I'm stressed. I'm sad. We just brushed over Astron's death like it was nothing. I need something strong. I need a shot. I'm about to go to the daiquiri bar after this. What the fuck did I just read? I'm absolutely going live tomorrow because there's no way I'm not reading the next chapters until next weekend. No. And now that I dropped my math class, I have time to go live during the week again. So I'm going live literally tomorrow. The lake is looking mighty inviting right now. Bloop. I'm so stressed out. I'm so stressed out. I wish y'all could feel my palms wet as water. I mean, water's not wet, but like, it's like I just dipped them in a bowl of water. Do myself a favor and read Tower of Dawn. Oh, y'all. Okay. I'll read Tower of Dawn tonight because I'm gonna have to lock this fucking book up in a box and throw the key away, like, to keep myself from reading the rest of the fucking book tonight. God. So I will channel all of my nerves and just fucking bone deep fear into this book. What the fuck? Y'all, no, the next live isn't a Throne of Glass. Isn't a Tower of Dawn live, I don't think. I think I have one more Empire of Storms live, and then I have a Tower of Dawn live. My knees weak, palms are sweaty, and I throat like, oh. And I'm like, I'm sweating. Where did I stop reading? The part where the Ilkin confirms that Erwin knows Aelin has the third and final word key that he needs. They're on a fucking boat. I don't know how they're gonna make it out of this one. It's not looking very good. Astrin's dead. I hate how we just brushed over her death. I didn't have a moment's notice to prepare myself or to process it. And now I'm processing it and I'm about to start crying. You know what? I'm actually not even gonna cry until I get the confirmation. She's not dead until I see a body. And I'm gonna leave it at that. They have her. I know they have her because there's no way that they would have known about her backstory. Actually, hear me out. Maybe they didn't capture her. Maybe her little leather thing, bloop, fell off while she was running away from them. The grandmother took it and was like, I can use this to manipulate Manon into thinking that I have Astrid to bring her back to me, right? She tells the Ilkin the story because the grandmother did it to her, so she would know what happened, under what circumstances. So she tells the Ilkin, look, you need to tell Manon this and this and this and this and this and this. And then she'll think that we have her. And it'll also bring her back to me so that we can kill her. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The matron knows her story. Exactly. There's no denial because nothing happened. I can't be in denial if this is all fake. No body, no death. I'm just saying. I haven't seen, all I saw was a leather hair tie, which it could easily be replicated, or it could easily just have slipped off of Astrid as she was making her great escape. So, in my mind, she's not dead. So, I'll just, yep. I see. Oh, yes. Thank you again. Thank you again for my coffee. Huh? That wasn't a fart, I promise. My foot slipped on the seat, y'all. But yeah, thank you. I don't know where we're going with this. It's not looking very good. And I want to read more, but at the same time, I don't want to read more. It's all gone to shit now. It's not fun anymore. We were having fun at the beginning, and it's from Dutch Bros. Just prepare yourself. The Emilia Clarke walk at the end of this. No. How far away are we from the end? We're not very far. We're more than halfway done now, so we're definitely getting there. This book is stressing me out. Two more lives for Empire of Storms. Okay. Yeah, 2 more lives and then we're into Tower of Dawn. Oh, Nico, I'm not looking ahead. I promise. God. Okay, well, I'm gonna schedule a live for tomorrow because there's no way I'm not reading what happens next. So I'm bringing back the weekday lives because this only going live during the weekend shit is old. It got old. I miss y'all and I miss reading. So the only time I have to read is when I do these lives, because during the week, if I don't make the time, like separate the time for it, I don't read at all. And I miss reading and I miss y'all. So I'm going live tomorrow and during the week. So yeah, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Okay, now I have to go pick up my order from Target that I made. Love y'all. Bye. Oh yeah, don't forget to tune into House of the Dragon tonight because Emma Darcy, that's their name, right? Emma Darcy is finally making their debut as Rhaenyra, and I'm so excited. Literally could not have cast a better person to play Rhaenyra than them. I'm so excited to see how they do. But yeah, I will be watching House of the Dragon tonight. I hope y'all are too. It's fuck Alicent forever. I hate that bitch so much. Hate that bitch so much. Fuck Kristen Cole. Let me stop before I get banned for bullying fictional characters again. All right, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.